All right, guys, so we got all of the meninges off of the brain. So I'm gonna show you that in a second. If you have not gone to Canvas and looked at the brain pictures, go into files. There's 3 different brain pictures that you can look at while we're going through the dissection. Okay, are you ready? Okay, so here we go. So this is the superior view of the brain. So this is how the brain would be sitting in your head, okay? And so this is superior, meaning the top. This is the inferior, meaning the bottom. So we're gonna go through the parts that you learned in lecture, okay? This right here is your frontal lobe. Frontal lobe right here in the front. This is the parietal lobe. Occipital lobe. Over on the side is your temporal lobe. So frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. All right, and you have 2 hemispheres. So you have the right cerebral hemisphere, the left cerebral hemisphere. They're separated by a long fissure right here. This fissure is called the longitudinal fissure. All right, and this comes down. Now, if you remember from lecture, it says there's convolutions. These bumps, these are called gyri. And these little shallow grooves right here that you see the blood vessels in, these are called sulci. So sulci, kind of sulk down. Gyri are the elevated ridges, longitudinal fissure. Then down here, this is the cerebellum, okay? And right in the middle is what we call the vermis of cerebellum, okay? Vermis of cerebellum, so you can see that right there. Here's your spinal cord, all right? So cerebrum, cerebellum, spinal cord, okay? Frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. You can see that right there. So these are those lobes there. Now, there's also fissures that separate the lobes. So this right here is the central fissure. It separates the frontal from the parietal. There's another fissure here that separates the parietal from the occipital. It's called the parieto-occipital fissure. There's the lateral fissure that separates the temporal from the occipital. And then there's the transverse fissure that separates right here. Okay, separates the cerebrum from the cerebellum. What we would be doing is we pull this down, and I don't know if you can see, get closer. When you pull this down, see these little blood vessels that are popping, little veins in here. There's an area in here called the choroid plexus, okay? Plexus means grouping of nerves. Now this right here, you have the superior colliculi, inferior colliculi, and up in here you have what's called the pineal body or pineal gland. All right, that's going to be a gland we're going to look at in a second. In here we have the 4th ventricle, and I'm going to pull this up in here. That's the 4th ventricle down in there. Okay, ventricle meaning like a vent, like there's a space. This is where the cerebrospinal fluid goes. All right. So again, it says frontal lobes go right on top of the brain, on top of the brain. I don't want to see this in the back.
When it's on top.
Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, central fissure, parieto-occipital fissure, longitudinal fissure, lateral fissure, transverse fissure, cerebellum, vermis of cerebellum, and spinal cord. And then you have your 4th ventricle down in here, which has your choroid plexus, superior colliculi, inferior colliculi, and pineal body. So this is the superior surface of our brain. You see the gyri, which are elevated, and the sulci, which are down in the little grooves down there.